One question, one story, one continent. This is your podcast, Africa Daily, with me, Alan Kasuja. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
With no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, banking with Capital One is like the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing to listen to another episode of your favorite podcast. And with our top-rated app, you can deposit checks and transfer money anytime, anywhere, making Capital One an even easier decision. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
The polite version is, hello, may I ask for your ID? Rude. Where is your ID? I'm almost certain that many people listening to this have heard that line before. Now, if you have to do things like collect an important document, board a plane, or enter a particular building, event, or venue, then chances are you'll definitely be asked for some form of identification. Can you imagine being without one for weeks and possibly months on end? That's been the case for a reported millions of people in Uganda. According to the government, many of those affected have been unable to access vital public services due to being without a digital identity card. This comes over 6 years after they were introduced by the country. That's a very long time. Today we are asking, why are so many Ugandans without ID cards? I'm Alan Kasuja, and this is Africa Daily. National ID initiatives are underway across many African countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, Botswana, and the list goes on. Digital IDs have been widely considered as a means of improving public service delivery for millions of people around the world through verifying one's ID for financial, social, and political reasons. A digital ID works as an extension of existing forms of identification, such as a driver's license or a voting card. It helps to bring out a wide range of information about an individual. A unique identity number, name, citizenship, ethnicity, biometric data, and a lot more. Gilbert Kadilo is Public Relations Officer at the National Identification and Registration Authority in Uganda. He starts by filling us in on the numbers of IDs that have been distributed.
Between 40 to 42 million, actually just shy of 42 million. That is according to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics projections. The population that is eligible for IDs, that is age 16 and above, is about 21.1 million of the 42.
So of those, how many have ID cards?
Printed, processed and printed, approximately 18.7 to 18.8 million national IDs.
So, considering how key those national IDs are, why are so many left without one?
There are quite a number of reasons. One is the issue of distance between the villages and the communities and the district offices. Often you have members of the community who have to move 30, 40 kilometers from far-flung. A round trip for such a person is anything between 50 to 70 kilometers.
Yeah, and I imagine some of the people who were registered to receive these IDs have died.
Yes.
But then again, the argument would be that if the government has centralized its data and deaths are generally registered, it should be able to identify who has died, and those can then be eliminated from the number of people that, should be collecting their IDs that haven't.
Yes, Alan, that is ideally true. But for us to come to grips with that, we need to understand the dynamics that informed the establishment of the national ID system in the country. The ideal situation is that you have a complete end-to-end registration system that starts at birth registration and terminates at death registration. So as you capture the events of birth and capture the events of death, you are continuously updating this system on a day-to-day basis.
A new report, Chased Away and Left to Die, that's what it's titled. Human rights organizations saying that Uganda's national digital ID system, which is key as to how individuals access their social rights, has led to mass exclusion. They argue that as many as 33% of Uganda's adult population has not yet received a national identity card, and that may even be an underestimate. And they also say that many others in the country have errors on their card and are unable to replace lost or stolen one, calling the entire process a nightmare. How do you respond to that?
I think it's a question of perspective and fact. I have just described one thing, that we have a population segment that is entitled for national IDs. That is age 16. And if we are going by those statistics, then we are saying that as a country, we have covered approximately 78% of the population that is eligible for national IDs.
We hear from a young man in Uganda sharing his experiences of being without a national ID. He was in need of a new ID after unfortunately being robbed. Little did he know how strenuous it was for him to apply for another one. He prefers to remain anonymous.
I lost the ID together with my other documentations, the driving permit and bank cards. And I was able to replace the bank cards within a week. The driving permit, I happened to also replace it after 2 weeks because I had to run an advert in the papers announcing that I had lost my ID. In case anyone had seen it, I would deliver it back to me. The process of getting back the driving permit was flawless. It was less than 30 minutes. So I thought this was going to be the same thing with the national ID. So I applied and happened to pay the replacement fee. I remember back then it was 50,000. I don't know whether it did change. And I went to one of the branches to process my replacement, and that's where my frustration now got high. It's not that I was looking for a new ID. It was a replacement, but I failed to get a replacement within a period of 3 months. 3 months became 1 year. 1 year became 2 years. 2 years is now coming to 3 years, and it started frustrating me. Now, the number I had lost because I didn't have a national ID, this is a number I had held since 2004. It was registered to all my social accounts. It was registered to all my online accounts. And now I was facing a problem whereby I could no longer even try resetting my own emails using my phone number because it was off. I struggled that to date I also still don't have a registered phone number.
You can just about imagine the number of complaints received from people who have followed the application process the right way but still remain without their national ID. What is going to be done to ensure that this will stop being an inconvenience to people? Yes, systems can be slow sometimes, especially in this part of the world, but what's happening right now to lessen this issue with getting an ID?
People are accessing mobile telecom services daily, electronically, hassle-free. People are accessing banking services electronically, hassle-free. We have over 50 institutions that are now linked to the national ID system. Driving permits, passports, all these are linked into the national ID system, and they are able to verify a person's particulars in an instant as soon as you present yourself. For cases of persons who have probably not yet received their physical national IDs, but we have already issued them with a national identification number, they are able to obtain what we call letters of confirmation of information as an interim measure as they wait for their physical national ID. These letters initially were being hard copy, produced physically. We've made provision for that. If you wanted to, you can visit our website. We've made provision for electronic access to this information. So, Alan, if you came to me today, registered for a national ID, whether a new one or a replacement, but you have your national identification number and you needed to access a service at some point of government or private sector point of service, you're free to access what we call a letter of confirmation or information, which says this person, name, age, etc., NIN number that has applied and is waiting for his national ID, but we can attest that this is the information. Those letters have serial numbers that can be electronically verified by anybody with a phone code reader downloaded on their phone. So I think in that direction as well, we are trying to make it as easy as possible for persons to access services for as long as they are registered with us.
Africa Daily is a BBC World Service production. My producers for this episode were Hannah Ajala and Marco Silva. Our editor is Kevin Silverton. If you like the show, make sure you subscribe to it. This way you'll never miss another episode. They'll just come up automatically on your device. I'm Alan Kasuja, that's with 2 J's. Thanks for listening.
The Americans are out, the Taliban in. A generation's work, the dreams of so many, shattered in days.
As we speak, there's Taliban right at my doorstep.
I can't believe the world abandoned Afghanistan. Our friends are going to get killed. They're going to kill us.
In our new podcast, you'll hear from people whose lives have shaped Afghanistan, who wished for and worked for different futures.
I think the biggest mistake that we made as Afghans was to feel that there was somebody else who will take care of everything for us.
A Wish for Afghanistan from the BBC World Service.
Everyone else has the luxury to pack and go. We can't, and we did not create this mess on our own.
Search for A Wish for Afghanistan with me, Lise Doucette, wherever you get your podcasts.